be kind. And subscribe.
Everyone, and welcome back to the United Nations of Horror. It's been a little bit. I'm Jason, and I am here with the one and only Doctor of Horror, Mark. Mark, how you been, man?
Pretty good. Well, no, I've had a horrible stinking cold, actually. One of the reasons we haven't recorded, because I keep coughing. And if you listen to my other podcast, there is one I really struggled with Sam, where I was just coughing a lot. But I did try, but, I just took time. And it took ages to get rid of. But I've still got a cough, but not anywhere near as bad. It's usually only precipitates when I go out into the cold, so I don't go out into the cold as best I can help it. But there you go. But yeah, not too bad otherwise.
I'm glad you're feeling better. It's colds are no fun, and I know I could kind of tell just from our text conversations that you were a little iffy about recording last week, and I was honestly still tired from my trip, so I was like, let's just hold off.
Yeah. Well, no need to rush talks on. The thing is, it's such a memorable film. I did watch it 2 weeks ago, but I didn't feel the need to rewatch it, other than for the pleasure of it, because it's so memorable. So fine. And honestly, I haven't seen it in years and years and years, and I still remember most of it. Watching it, it was like, oh yeah, I remember that. All right, I had problems with in terms of, I thought certain bits came earlier than others and later, things like that. But otherwise, yeah, it was all there.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very memorable film. And I guess we'll kind of talk a little bit about just general werewolf films here. I mean, we're a big fan. We've covered a lot of werewolf films here on UNH before, so I don't want to retread too much. But let me just ask you right from the beginning here, Mark, where do you think you would rank this in your kind of overall list of best werewolf films?
I think it's the top one for me.
Is
actually.
It? Wow.
I really like it. I mean, it just about pips American Werewolf in London. But after that, my list is kind of unusual. My third is probably Ginger Snaps. I really like Ginger Snaps. And then probably the Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman.
Yeah.
Because it's a classic.
I think that's still my favorite. Well, I don't know. I mean, I go, it depends on the day, but this is up there for me. It's definitely in the top 3, I would say, for me as well. So, yeah, we're in agreement there. And of course, American Werewolf in London, those transformation sequences, man, that's another one we should probably cover in vast detail at some point. But today we are doing Dog Soldiers.
Yeah, Dog Soldiers. Yes, and okay, I saw this when it came out in the cinema, but I went in cold, not knowing really what it was about. So I had a blast when I went to see this. Is this your first watch, or have you seen it before?
I have seen this one before. Actually, this is probably my 3rd or 4th watch for this one, and I think this is another one. I feel like I've said this the past 4 or 5 episodes, but every time I see it, I just enjoy it more and more.
Oh yes, it's definitely got legs to rewatchability. And weirdly, I bought the Blu-ray for this, and then found I'd already bought a Blu-ray of it, but from a different company several years ago. It was unsealed as well, so I've had 2 sealed Blu-rays, different companies, but of Dog Soldiers. So it was like I had to pick which one to watch. So I just watched one. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you can never have too much Dog Soldiers, really.
Yeah, I really, really like this. And when I saw it, I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep an eye on this director, Neil Marshall. He's going to make some great things, and he has made some great things. He's made some things that are not so great, but and unfortunately, he's kind of gone quiet now, mostly. I think he still does stuff, but this is his debut, I believe.
That's crazy to me.
Yes. So that's quite amazing. And he followed it up with The Descent, which I thought was okay. A lot of horror people really like The Descent. But this is my favourite film of his, though there's another film which is more of a war action film called Centurion, Roman, that I really rate highly too.
Which I got, and I was gonna try to watch that before we covered this, but I haven't gotten to it. But it is on my watch list here, and I'm going to get to it this week for sure.
And he made a kind of Mad Maxy in Scotland film that was okay. It was a bit too incoherent for my liking, called Doomsday.
Interesting.
Doomsday, but it's worth a look. But it is not in the same level as Dog Soldiers and Centurion or The Descent. He also did the remake, the redo or reboot, whatever you want to call it, of Hellboy, which really did not go down well. But I thought it was all right.
Yeah, I think the criticism of that is like, well, it really didn't do anything new, and it really, I guess it didn't, but I thought it was fine. It was a good film.
I thought it was fine. Yeah, I think that the other one, the Ron Perlman and Del Toro ones are better for sure.
Yeah.
However, I thought it was decent. He also made some cracking episodes of Game of Thrones. Neil Marshall, he directed some. Like the best one in season 2 is a battle. I think it's episode 8. Really good episode. Neil Marshall directed that.
Yeah,
he's good at action.
I have heard that, and just based on some of our talks on and off air, I am going to give Game of Thrones another chance here pretty soon. I believe I'm gonna try to do a binge, watch it all the way through.
Yeah. I watched it all the way through expecting it to be terrible at the end because everyone said how terrible it was, but no, it was fine. It was a perfectly fine ending. I don't know. I guess if you read the books, you can get salty about stuff, but honestly, it's fine. What's the problem?
Well, I mean, I think sometimes maybe things are of their time too, and what people get up in arms about is almost like it's like one person reacts to it negatively, and then everyone wants to just jump on the bandwagon, which I try not to do. But that's a shame, because I had heard bad things about the ending as well. But I have not seen it, obviously.
Yeah. It always makes me laugh. Walking Dead always made me laugh, because I used to watch it, and every week there'd be this torrent of abuse and how terrible it was. And like after several weeks of this, it's like, why are these people still watching this show if they don't like it? I don't get it. But I did notice when at the point I felt it really dropped off, all the criticism disappeared. So basically, that's because everyone's not watching, right?
Exactly.
So I'm kind of so that's the point the show gets bad, is when the complaints stop and everything goes quiet, because everyone stopped watching at that point. It's funny. Anyway, we're kind of diverting.
We are.
From our own what's it.
I guess before we get into the cast and everything, do you want to kind of get into feedback here?
Yeah, we did put out a note for some feedback a few weeks back now, because we were expected to record a few weeks ago and we just didn't get around to it. I put out a request in our YouTube. Our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/UN of horror, as one word, to put a note out. And I actually put it out on Halloween, just to give you an idea. So I've got some feedback. Mark Ord, hi Mark, said, let's remember Spoon, the man who is willing to go toe-to-toe with a lycanthrope, punch its teeth out and spit in its eye. If I'm ever about to be eaten alive by a werewolf, I hope I have the determination, righteous fury of Spoon, and I say, I hope I give you the shits. What a legend. Wonderful movie, yes. So Bruce Hannon also chipped in. Great choice. Dog Soldier is probably my favourite werewolf movie, even ahead of American Werewolf. Yeah, so we agree there, Bruce. Okay, that's a slight lie. It's actually my second favourite movie after Teen Wolf, but I don't feel confident to have that as my first sentence. Fair enough. Teen Wolf's quite low for me, I have to say. Not as low as some, but yeah.
I like Teen Wolf for what it is. It's
it's fine.
It's of its time, It's
it has a stinky sequel, I think, if I remember rightly, but never mind. The first one.
Didn't MTV do like a series or something, or maybe
it was a TV series? Yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it's any good or not. But
yeah. And it goes on to say, there's a few reasons why it appeals to me. I love the way the movie's set up. It feels like Rambo or First Blood or Southern Comfort, and then suddenly throw werewolves into the mix.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of a bit like Dusk Till Dawn in that way, right? It, it starts as a gangster movie and suddenly becomes a vampire movie. And Dog Soldiers is kind of like that.
Also rather Predator-like in a lot of ways, too.
Yes. And Aliens. I am a massive fan of Sean Pertwee. Yes, he has a few stinkers in his bag, but is so underrated in my opinion. I think Sean Pertwee's great, and he's great in this as a Sarge. I always wish Sean had played the Christopher Eccleston Doctor Who roles. I think he might have toned down the cheeky chappy routine, and it would have been a nice tribute to his dad, who obviously was John Pertwee, the third Doctor Who, just to make that clear. Interestingly enough, Dog Soldiers and 28 Days Later, starring Christopher Eccleston, both came out in 2002. It was a pretty good year for British cinema, with the likes of About a Boy and Bend It Like Beckham also being year release. Yeah, 2002 was alright.
Yeah, I think they were released in theaters on the same weekend. If I know, I read that somewhere, but I'm pretty sure it was. So also the new the Star Wars, the George Lucas, not remake, but I can't remember which one it was at this point. But it was up against some steep competition in your country, Mark, in England when it came out. Unfortunately, it never got a theatrical release here in the U.S., which is a real...
Really?
No,
I'm shocked. I can't... why?
Such a shame. Such a shame. It actually premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel here, of all places, which is just...
it's so good for sci-fi, though, right?
It's so much better than that.
Yeah. Anyway,
it deserves better.
Anyway, finally, I also like the werewolf design. The way they stood upright was probably due to budget design. However, this hybrid look with almost human torso and werewolf head works better with this type of movie when there is action fighting, similar to the Underworld franchise. Yeah, if I remember rightly, I think they got trained ballet dancers.
Yes, I think
to be the werewolves on stilts as well, so that they moved in a very specific way, and it looks pretty damn good. Weirdly, the werewolf design in this looks a lot like there's a whole Judge Dredd story where he goes like forward into the future, and there's werewolves, and the werewolves in that look quite a lot like the werewolves in this. Anyway, that's Bruce. Thanks, Bruce. And then finally, we have Kevin Matthews. Hi, Kevin. Always contributes. Friend of the show is Kevin.
Indeed. Thanks to everybody.
I think, and Kevin Matthews, I think it is, to use the technical term, an absolute banger. He says.
Yes.
I realise this isn't very effective for a podcast, but here's a photo of the T-shirt I'm wearing under my thermal warmer today, and he's got a T-shirt of Dog Soldiers.
Oh, amazing.
Also, aside from everything else that works in it, Pertwee is amazing, but the whole cast is great. It has my favourite little Matrix gag with "There is no spoon" line. Yes.
Indeed.
Yeah, it references a few films. There's a Star Trek reference in it at one point, because I think it's Spoon who says Dave Kobayashi Marudus.
He does, like yes.
Yeah, nice.
There's the theory that you can always find a Star Trek reference in films, and a lot of times it is true.
Yeah. There's also a theory that every single film ever made since 1940 has some sort of reference to Wizard of Oz, which I don't know if that's true, but interesting reference. Idea. Anyway, so Dog Soldiers. So it's 21 years old as we record.
Oh, that makes me feel old.
Can't believe it. Wow, can't believe it.
Man.
And as I say, I went in cold and really enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed, there's a very, very, very English reference in this film, which is about the football game with Germany. They keep going on about.
Oh, yeah.
I did actually watch that game and remembered it. So when I was in the cinema and they were talking about it, it made me chuckle. Because I was thinking, are they talking about that game? Because it's a famous game. Because we were constantly losing to Germany for various reasons. Often, Germany were always a good technical team, but often they get lucky as well. And football, soccer, is a game where if luck runs your way, skill, be damned.
Yeah.
If you get them goals in that little net, you
That's just how it's
win,
going to go.
right?
Yeah.
And that's that. But then there's this one game we played against Germany, which was an absolute banger, and we beat them 5-1. And that was the game that we kept talking about. Was it Spoon, or was a few of them kept going on about? They
I know
to
there
see
was,
this going into.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which character it was in particular that just like that's all he wants in life is to get home to see that game. It may have been Spoon.
Yeah, that's all he wants to do. Yeah, they were a good cast, but they, apart from Spoon and Sarge and is it Cooper? Kevin McKidd played. I can't remember. Was it Cooper? Cooper.
I believe so.
Yeah, Cooper.
Yeah.
The others were kind of similar looking, and because they were all wearing the same uniform and it was kind of dark, it was hard to tell. Spoon was the standout among the squaddies, as we call them in Britain. So it starts with a couple doing a camping holiday in Scotland, which is probably not a great idea given all the midges there. But anyway, and the woman gives the man a silver letter opener, very prescient, really. And then we see their tank get attacked. And then, meanwhile, we see Cooper. Like he's going through the sort of training to join a sort of special services squad.
Yeah,
but the head of the squad, played by Liam Cunningham, which is interesting because he was the captain in Large Voyage of the Demeter. Right?
Indeed, he was. Yes,
I think this might be the first time I saw Liam Cunningham in anything. Actually, basically he says you've got to shoot the dog, and he won't shoot the dog. He will not shoot the dog.
Oh man, and I feel like if you're an animal lover, this scene is going to affect you big time. So, and I mean, it really sets up the whole film.
And interestingly, they did the similar thing in Kingsman, didn't they? They did. They asked him to shoot his dog, JB, and he refused to do it. But it turned out it was a blanks. It was a test, but he just wouldn't do it. So yeah, it's kind of interesting there. So basically, they, I think 4 weeks after Cooper fails his SAS induction because he won't shoot the dog. He's back with his squad, which is there's 6 of them. With Sarge and Cooper, they're dropped into a highland to do a training exercise against an SAS squad, and you know they sit around the old campfire and talk about. And there's a whole scene where Sarge gives a monologue about a friend of his who died, whose skin belonged to the devil and his soul belonged to God. There was that kind of thing.
Really great
quite an
story.
interesting little story. Yeah. And they'll go quiet, don't they?
And great acting, you know. And you could say that about, I feel like all the actors in this film. Like, they all do a really good job. I do agree that sometimes I don't want to say they're interchangeable, but I mean, we know that a lot of these guys are not going to make it. And as you say, Mark, since it's dark, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell them apart.
Yeah, and Sarge is a Cockney, Cooper Scots, and the rest of them come from the northeast, it sounds like, to me. And I wonder this might be one of the reasons it wasn't released stateside, because that accent probably wasn't that familiar to people who used to Cockneys, they used to Scots, they used to posh English, but back then I don't think the northeast was that international. Now that's different because of Game of Thrones,
right?
Where there was a lot of that used. I think it's much more understandable, much more familiar. And also with the success of Peaky Blinders, the Birmingham accent is much more familiar now as well internationally. But back then, that might be one of the reasons it didn't get released, because of those fairly strong accents.
That's a good point. You know, I did not think of that, but yeah, you're probably right during that time, especially early, 2002. I mean, we were getting more foreign films in the U.S., but not a ton. It's not like it is now, like where most films kind of go everywhere. If it's a British film, we get it here, or it was different back then. Things were just more localized, I guess, back then.
Yeah,
So
those through particularly Game of Thrones, those accents are much more familiar to international audiences. So this would probably get an internet if it were the same situation. Anyway,
yeah, absolutely.
so they share a story, but then they find this SAS squad have all been like ripped to pieces or attacked by something. And actually, doesn't Sarge mention briefly, oh yeah, apparently campers go missing round here. It happens quite frequently. It was only a month ago, the last one.
Indeed.
There's that.
Yeah, we get a little bit of the Resident Evil back thing. It's like, oh, campers go missing in Raccoon City, and we're not sure what's going on. So I appreciated that. And just to cut in here briefly, Mark, the director, gosh, he had been developing this story since 1995, and he did 18 different revisions of this script, apparently. Just wanted to mention that. I mean, it's crazy to me that he had this idea, and I mean, it took him just all these years to get this made, but it's impressive, I feel like, that he stuck with it and really stuck to his guns.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what the revisions are for. Is it to save money, or is it to improve the story, streamline the story? It's a very streamlined story. It feels finessed and finished. It doesn't feel like this was a half-half script in any way.
Yeah.
The script's solid, the action's solid. The director knew what he was doing. We're never particularly disorientated in the action, are we? We kind of know what's going on at any one point. There is one scene where the world's coming in that reminded me, a bit later on, this is in a house, they're coming through windows. It really reminded me of John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13, actually. Where the gang's coming through the windows and they're defending the police station. It reminded me of that somewhat. Anyway, they find this SAS guy, and they kind of patch him up and start dragging him out of the woods. And he keeps saying things that are a bit weird about what attacked them. But they know that something's pursuing them. But one of the squaddies gets impaled on a tree running away, doesn't he? Which comes from nowhere. Comes from nowhere. Oh, man.
I felt bad. Felt bad for the guy. What a way to go.
And the sergeant also gets attacked and kind of gets his stomach ripped open. But they kind of patch him up and they manage to drag him off.
I had kind of forgotten how brutal that was. They make this stuff look really good and really, as I say, brutal. Like, I mean, you've literally got his guts, his sausages, if you will, hanging out here.
Yeah, he calls them his sausages.
Yes, exactly.
Sausages. Now, that might be a bit of a joke reference to a British thing, because there was famously, and this is going back to the 70s, so it's probably not a reference to that. There was this show on, and they claimed to have a talking dog. And this dog came on and it growled, basically, and the owner moved its mouth and it kind of said sausages.
Really?
Sausages. Like that.
Nice.
So if it always makes you hear that, it's probably not a reference at all that was intended, but there we go. So they basically trying to get away. Wales has been badly attacked, but this basically a Land Rover pulls up and this woman's in it who tells them to get in. She turns out she's like a zoologist or something, and later on we find out she was actually helping out the SAS squad with what was going on, though she wasn't aware. She says it's werewolves or anything like that. She knows there's something out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, they managed to get to this house, and they've realised the family aren't there, so I think they assume the werewolf's gone, right? That's what they assume. But later on, they piece together that the werewolves is the people in the house.
Yeah, I know.
It's the werewolf's house.
She mentions that she knows the family, so I think maybe she says they're on holiday. I'm trying to remember.
Oh, I can't remember now.
But either way, we know that they're not there, and they've left all this stuff behind. So, interestingly, this I would have never known this had I not read up a little bit beforehand. But the cabin they used is actually not real. This was done later on. I want to say it was not in a sawmill, but it was a totally different location. It was not done in the Highlands. And we have some shots of the cabin outside, of course, but but those are two totally separate locations. So the magic of
Okay,
movie
you
making.
did not know. You would not know.
No,
you would not
you have
know,
no
would
clue.
you, at all. No. Yeah, I also like the fact that once they hold up in the house, Spoon is like, this is like Rorke's Drift, you know. Balls are British steel, and his mates goes, "You're loving this, ain't you?" Spoon's into it. He doesn't mind. He likes the idea of a fight, but you know the other guys are moaning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they treat both the SAS bloke and Wells is injured worse, and they've got him on a bed trying to sort of treat him. But as it goes on, the SAS bloke in particular is hinting at stuff, and he's obviously not as poorly as they first thought, or he's recovering. But then we see Sarge is slowly recovering, so like being werewolfy makes you recover injuries. Because they've been slashed by a werewolf or whatever, they're going to turn into werewolves, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
We didn't throw out spoilers for this, but this is a 20-year-old film, so yeah. So what happens next? A few of them die. I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great action sequences here, but I love the way they do this, Mark, because we don't really we get glimpses of the werewolves at this point, really, but we don't see them full on till much later, and I think that is really the most effective way to do a monster movie like this. You know, it's Predator is like the template, I feel like, almost.
And Aliens.
Yes,
definitely
absolutely.
A strong streak of Aliens.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's basically an action film with horror elements, isn't it? That's really what we're getting here. So, yeah. There was quite a lot of talk about a sequel that I don't think ever came off, but there was also apparently a web series based on it, so it went some ways.
I don't know if they ever got the web series made. I know there was talk of it, but I don't think it ever went through. And I know there were some legal disputes as well, which is a shame, you know, when that kind of stuff happens. Because from what I understand, they initially wanted to do a trilogy. And in fact, the second film was even written and I guess just stuck in development hell and never happened. But I mean, never say never, right? All these years later.
Yeah, and I believe the idea was that second film was the soldiers were actually werewolves and knew they were werewolves, and that was part of their thing. Operating, you know, the way they operate. So interesting idea, completely different from this. But yeah, so the zoologist that picks up Megan sort of drip feeds information, but you know, she's helping them out, but they're trying to figure out how to get out of there, and they've got no transport. So it's a bit like Night of the Living Dead as well.
Good point.
They're trapped in the house, trying to figure out how to get out of this place. Now, in the Night of the Living Dead, they're kind of, there's a car here, there's a pump here, maybe we can coordinate. And they kind of come up with a plan similar to that. And again, Assault on Precinct 13 has a similar thing. One of them they decide one of them's going to try and make a break for it to go get help. You know, they have to decide who's doing it. Spoon volunteers to create a diversion while another guy goes and gets stuff. Goes and gets a car. It doesn't quite work out.
This is the second.
This didn't quite work for me because it felt like, well, where's he going? And then it's at this point they realise it's werewolves, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They realise there's something weird going on, or there's some sort of creatures, but they realise it's werewolves.
And I think Megan even talks about how she's been like studying the werewolves in the Highlands, you know, and so yeah, we know it's werewolves fairly early on, I guess.
And there's also Ryan says that basically, the SAS guy says, we were sent to capture a werewolf to figure it out, using it as a weapon.
Yeah,
and you guys were bait. So wow.
Oh man. I think we all suspected like something was not on the up and up with him. Even when we find him injured, you know, it's like we just know. And I mean, the actor's been in so many. I feel like he always plays evil roles. I'm trying to think of something.
Well,
where
he wasn't
hasn't.
evil in Last of the Demeter, was he?
That's true. You know what? Good point,
yeah.
Mark. Good point.
Yeah, yeah, but he's often a gangstery or a hard man kind of role.
Indeed.
He often does that kind of thing. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. He's good in this, as anything. So he was pretty good right off the bat. And I say that, he might have been in other things before, but I'm not aware of them. But yeah, he was pretty good in this.
Yeah.
So basically, they hold up, and basically they decide they've got to hold up and try and make it to sunrise. Meanwhile, Sarge is improving, and he has a discussion with Cooper, doesn't he? He says, "Well, what if I start to turn?" And they have this quite funny discussion. Well, what if it's not like when you have a piss, you got to have a piss, but when you want to dump, you can go on for another 2 hours. He says, "I'll try not to change if I can help it." So hopefully it's kind of, that conversation always made me laugh. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, good stuff.
And there's also a bit where Spoon, during the diversion where Spoon's trying to get back to the house, but Joe cops it, doesn't he? He kind of gets basically ripped to pieces. And the woman's come on, soldier, move your ass. And he goes, "I love it when posh birds talk dirty." Silly line. Spoon was the standout, really.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we can move on a bit, and the werewolves basically start coming in, but they come in waves, don't they? Then back off for various reasons. It's never quite clear, but they kind of come in waves. But finally, it's getting the house, and Spoon has to face off to one of the werewolves, and he does not back away, does he?
No, he does not. I love this scene. I feel like everyone remembers this, the boxing match, because.
Yeah.
The actor who played Spoon had apparently a boxing background too, so he really lets loose.
Yeah, he punches the werewolf so hard he knocks one of its teeth out and it embeds into a post. That's pretty tough. And he's having a go with it, and he only kind of loses because the second werewolf comes in and joins in. Really?
That's true.
And he shouts at the end, as we mentioned already, "Hope I give you the shits." Which kind of reminds me at the end of the Day of the Dead. In the end of the day, one of the soldiers is kind of getting ripped to pieces, and he goes, "Choke on it." So it's kind of reminding me of that as well. And in fact, their design looked quite a bit like that. So yeah. So the Sarge realises he's going to turn, but he kind of volunteers to sort of. He goes, before I fully turn, I can sort of help out. And they kind of basically... Oh, they realise the woman's involved?
Yes.
Doesn't she say what sounds like a poster tagline? She says something like, Mother Nature's a bitch. No, Mother Nature's a woman and she's a bitch. Or something like that, as she's starting to turn as well.
Yeah, and she was in on it from the... I mean, she's a part of the werewolf pack from the get-go, right? So
yeah, should mention there's a dog in this.
I love the dog.
I'm happy to say that the dog survives,
Indeed.
which is always nice. And essentially, the house gets blown up with the werewolves in, and only Cooper gets away with the dog. That's it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Very impactful film. Also, that explosion apparently was done with a miniature. And I never knew.
Yeah, looks good.
Never
looks
knew.
Good. But actually, I should have mentioned the silver letter opener does, that was right at the beginning, does get used in a fight between Cooper and Ryan, because he basically stabs him with the silver thingy.
Really enjoyed that last fight because they've sort of built it up from the very beginning, right? Like these two don't like each other. Which is just as simple as that. Like, he doesn't like the fact that he killed the dog, and
and he saved the dog. That's full circle.
Indeed,
he saves the dog.
Yep.
as well, doesn't he? Shows you he likes dogs. And I like the ending. He gets out, and it's like a load of like tabloid newspapers say things. "Werewolves ate my platoon." That made me laugh because you do see headlines like that in the British tabloids.
Oh, really?
Honestly, the really silly one. Like Hitler lives on the moon. Freddie Starr, so and so ate my hamster. There's all sorts of stupid, famously silly. But you have like the National Enquirer. Right?
Oh
so you
yeah,
have
we
that
have
kind
just
of-
as silly. It's no different here.
Yeah. So yeah, and then you see the shot England 5, Germany 1, which is a real match.
Interesting.
That made me laugh. That was referencing the film. And I remember at the time thinking, boy, that's going to date this film. But it still works. It totally works. It's fine.
That's awesome. No, I had no clue if that was referencing a real match or not. I was curious, though, as an international viewer, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I'm just looking at when the date of that match. September the 1st, 2001, that match happened. It was the qualifiers for the World Cup. England won 5-1, which is so unexpected. That's one of the reasons it's well remembered, because it's such an unexpected result. England never do well against Germany.
Huh.
I mean, men's soccer isn't international. Never done. It's doing well now, but for decades it was just bad. You know.
Yeah, interesting.
It was, yeah. Given it's our national sport, the one sport, you know, the really big sport. I mean, we do well in other sports, and we do well at the Olympics, but for some reason, soccer we just can't do well on the international stage. I don't know. The women's game is much better, actually. Anyway, sorry, I'm diverting onto football.
No, I've always been interested in football, as you guys properly call it. Here, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. I was going to say it's not that huge here, but there again, you have like little pockets that are really vested in soccer. Like you have specific bars and stuff here that just like they're open like all night for what we call soccer matches. So it's interesting. But I feel like personally, I'd always rather watch a UK football match than an American football,
Yeah. I mean,
But
it
it's
depends
preference.
if you like action, you want fast sports, and some
Exactly.
sports just slow down to it. I cannot stand cricket, for example. It's way too slow. I've never really watched a full game of American football, but I've seen bits and it looks okay. But there's way more fun games that are similar.
Yeah.
Australian rules football. There's certain Irish games that are amazing. Gaelic sports that are amazing to watch, but you don't get them on the TV much, but they are really fun.
Really?
To watch.
Huh.
I like basketball's very action-packed.
Oh, yeah,
and
see, that's why I like
that's fully
basketball.
American game.
Yeah.
But and so on. I really like rugby. Rugby's my game of preference of sports I like to watch, and I used to play it a lot. You see, as well.
Nice.
And it makes me laugh because to this day I played it for 7-8 years. To this day, I still do not understand all the rules.
Oh wow.
I don't understand certain rules because they were never explained to me, and I just listened to the ref. And you kind of by listening to the ref and knowing when you get penalised, I don't run ahead here because the ref will blow his whistle, not because that's the rule. Anyway, we're kind of diverting.
I mean, it's interesting to me because I've always wondered about the rules of rugby, but I guess we'll talk about that off air. But back to Dog Soldiers, man. Such a great werewolf film. You say it may be your favorite, right, Mark?
It is my favourite.
It is your favorite, so there you go, man. A high recommend. Should we get into scores for this one?
Yeah. Okay, shall I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
I think I'll give this a 9. And I think that's probably overrating it a bit because it's nowhere near a perfect film. It's got some issues that we haven't really gone into, but we mentioned one of them. Some of the characters are kind of hard to distinguish, but they get lost fairly early. I think it really helps that we have Sarge, Spoon and Cooper as clear and distinct, but the others kind of start merging. I think Joe's reasonably distinctive, but I mean we do lose one of the guys really early as well, don't we? When he runs onto that tree. But very few issues with this film. I really, really like it. It's punchy. It gets in and out. It references lots of other stuff while being wholly its own thing. So yeah, I'd say a 9 for me.
Nice.
What about you?
Man, I love this one a lot. I don't know that I love it at 9 much for me, but very close. I would give it a very solid 8. Like it's as you say, it's punchy. It's action filled. The werewolves, I love the way the werewolves look. I think
they move really interestingly because they're dancers. They move in a sort of graceful way, which is weird for werewolves.
I agree, and I think this may be my favorite werewolf design. Like they just look so cool, so cool. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, man, I think we both love it a lot. And it's if it's not my favorite, it's up there. Um, for sure. So I think if you haven't seen this one and you're just looking for a really good werewolf film, this is it. I feel like it's hard to find really good werewolf films. They're out there, but they're just like compared to like the vampire genre, like you have more a bigger selection of good vampire films, and you have a rather kind of small pool of really quality werewolf films. Do you think that's fair, Mark?
Yeah, yeah. I think werewolf films are much more sporadic. Vampires, they can impact. The nature of vampirism, a vampire story is it's very plastic. So it can be played for laughs, it can be played for scares, it can be played for romance, gothic romance, and so on. So you get a huge range of different types of vampire. You go from your 30 Days a Night savage vampires right through to your Frank Langella's Dracula, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, and you get your sparkly ones, and all that. And, whole series have been made, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, traded heavily on vampires and also demons. But, the names in the words in the title, Vampire Slayer, True Blood, and so on. All of these. Whereas werewolves, I think it's although it's very allegorical, obviously, the nature of man and beast and so on, it doesn't have the same plasticity.
Yeah.
I can't really. I know that American Werewolf in London is that, but a werewolf love story doesn't feel the same as a vampire love story, say.
Yeah, I agree. I know there's
so it's a little more limited, and I think the quality of werewolf films are just lower than the great werewolf films are not up there with the great vampire films. Let's put it that way.
I would very much agree.
Yeah.
I mean, they even they've tried series like Hemlock Grove on I believe it's on Netflix. That's got like werewolf stuff, but I don't know. That one didn't really grab me, and I feel like that's often the case with werewolf films and when they try to do TV series. But I love the really good werewolf films. Like I love them just as much as vampire films. Is what I want to say here. It's just I wish we got more of them.
There's just not that many. Yeah. Exactly. There's the Howling.
Yes.
The Wolfen. There's Wolf with Jack Nicholson, which I've never seen.
Oh, I love that one.
And there's a few others. Ginger Snaps, I think, is a quality trilogy.
And that is one I have not seen that I feel like we need to cover at some point, because you're not the only one who has said that Ginger Snaps is really good. Like I've always heard. Oh, it's
really
tremendous.
Interesting, and it's got this allegory of puberty,
right,
and
that time of the month.
Time of the month, exactly. And also, when you're a kid, you suddenly start sprouting hair.
Exactly.
That's what else about. Another one that's really good that often doesn't get mentioned is a French one called Brotherhood of the Wolf, which isn't quite a werewolf movie. There's other stuff going on, but you can just about lump it in there with it. That's a great movie, though. Quite long. An action-y film as well. But then you get the other end, not so good. Underworld, it's okay, but it's not great,
I love Underworld, but the films, I would say they kind of get worse as they go,
and then there's I think the most psychologically complex werewolf film is probably A Company of Wolves.
I have not seen that one, okay.
That's really interesting. There's all sorts of Freudian and other psychological aspects to it. And I really, the nature of men and beasts, there's lines in it that are really classic, like some wolves have the hair on the inside and things like that. Just be careful of men. That sort of thing. So kind of interesting, yeah.
Yeah, one to check out.
And of course, the classic werewolves from What We Do in the Shadows. We're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Oh, I love that one.
What a line! What a line!
That show, so good, so good.
Yes. yes. And the movie, yeah, both of them.
Yes,
really good.
absolutely.
Yeah, and of course there's werewolves in Twilight too. And there's werewolves in Harry Potter.
Indeed, yeah, I almost forgot about that, yeah.
And number 3, I think, it's the third film, has a werewolf sort of thing, a story, a sort of subplot as well. Yeah, okay, all right, let's... yeah, you have scored.
Yeah. Should we wrap it up here?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We really appreciate you listening. As always, check us out on Facebook. Check us out on YouTube. We're on several different social media sites. So, but definitely, if you want to interact with us, come be a part of our Facebook group. We're still there. We know Facebook is the older platform, but it works for us. I really feel like it's still very user friendly and accessible. So come join us. And next time, we're not exactly sure. I don't think we've decided what we're doing yet, but
we may do an electric chair.
Yeah,
but we'll put something on Facebook before we record to get feedback. Certainly for an electric chair, we want to hear what you've been watching and all that, and sort of talk about what's currently in the thing. And also, we'll be sort of broaching horror and TV and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. If we do that, well, no promises. We might go completely different and say, right, that film we need to talk about, or something like that.
And we're also getting into the holiday season, so we've got some good Christmas stuff to cover. But whatever it is, rest assured it will be fun. And thank you guys for listening. Mark, thank you for all your time as well. Greatly appreciated.
Oh, that's all right. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's always fun, man. But looking forward to the next episode. I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.
And we'll see you right back here for the next episode of the United Nations of Horror.
The United Nations of Horror is a podcast about all things horror. From thrillers of yesteryear to today's modern horror, we are here to present fun and intelligent conversation about the genre films we love. Join us and please help spread the word about the United Nations of Horror podcast and videocast to horror fans across the globe. Find the podcast on all fine podcasting services. Join us on Facebook by simply going to facebook.com and entering in United Nations of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com and searching for United Nations of Horror podcast.